Your Voice, Shropshire Disability Network Newsletter, November 2011. Part 1. The Cruel Nonsense of Employment Support Allowance. Thanks to CareWatch for this article. CareWatch is a campaign group for carers run by independent, unpaid carers, which aims to provide a non-party political campaign platform to change the way that opinion formers, politicians and journalists think about carers. It first wants to get the desperately underfunded system changed. You can find out more at carerwatch.com. 1.5 million incapacity benefit claimants are being migrated to the new benefit, Employment Support Allowance. The design of this new benefit is not fit for purpose and is causing great distress. ATOS are tasked to divide people with disability into two overlapping and confused ESA groups, one to face a regime of time limits, sanctions and mandatory work activity, the other group to be written off and left alone. The first group is too harsh and the second is too dismissive. People with serious long-term disability do not fall into these two categories. All people should be offered help back to work if they want it, and no long-term disabled person should be harassed in this way. All deserve respect and a safe and secure regime where they can try to find work. ESA doesn't offer this. CareWatch has never criticised ATOS for having problems in trying to carry out this impossible task. It understands that the British welfare system has been changed to be in line with the more limited US welfare system. A new regime of time limits, sanctions, threats and mandatory activity has been introduced across the entire system. It is not appropriate to extend this harsh regime to people with serious long-term illness or disability, and this is the source of the fear of ESA. Fit people are imposing mandatory activity and sanctions on people with illness or disability. Fit people think it will be good for disabled people. This forced activity looks very different when you see it from the other end of the telescope. The new style time limits and sanctions apply to the work-related activity group, WRAG. These conditions engender stress and may make more people ill. All people with a serious long-term illness or disability deserve help back to work in a safe and supportive environment without time limits and sanctions. It should be obvious from common sense and normal human empathy that applying undue pressure to people with serious long-term illness or disability is cruel and unnecessary. Free QC helps parents of deaf children win cuts reversal. In the face of legal action, Stoke-on-Trent Council has made a significant U-turn on the cuts to vital services for deaf children. Their case has serious implications for other councils considering cuts in help for deaf children. After the National Deaf Children's Society began a High Court legal challenge, the council agreed to quash its earlier decision. The legal action followed months of campaigning by local parents of deaf children. But the NDCS was able to call on some heavyweight support in the case and is very grateful to a firm of solicitors and a QC for providing free legal help. 1 in 5 councils across England has already cut educational support for deaf children. Shropshire and Telford parents of deaf children can do the following. Contact your council to confirm its spending plans. Visit the NDCS map to check the situation in your area. If there are cuts in your area, download the NDCS Guide to Saving Services. The NDCS free phone helpline is 0808 800 8880, or you can email helpline@ndcs.org.uk. Americans pride themselves on doing things bigger and better than everyone else, but judging by this bunch of signs, what the collective noun for a lot of signs, they are also world champions at not remembering where they're going. Perhaps we should put up similar directions for our next SDN general meeting in case anyone gets lost or forgetful on the way there. By the way, that's a hint to turn up. The meeting is on the 8th of December at Mearside Community Centre in Shrewsbury from 10:30 till 1. As always, the tea will be first class, the wit sparkling and the debate incisive. This time it could be to do with human rights, but final decisions still pending. Please come along. How do neighbouring Shropshire councils end up poles apart on coping with the cuts? The think tank Demos, working with Scope, has measured how councils around England and Wales are managing their social care and support budgets. There is a sharp and cruel contrast between the two local authorities that make up what was historically known as Shropshire. While Shropshire Council is graded as bad, Telford and Wrekin comes out as good. The scale on which English and Welsh councils are rated goes from very good through good, well, okay, poor, bad and very bad. We could have ranked local authorities by their budget cuts, but we wanted to recognise those councils who are protecting their frontline services from the cuts, says Demos, explaining why it is focusing on how councils are coping with the cuts. By going onto the Demos website, www.demos.co.uk, and simply clicking on Shropshire or Telford and Wrekin on the map, or the drop-down list, you can see how the councils rate. Even people without easy access to a computer should do this. It's a real eye-opener. Your local library can help you, or perhaps ask a PC-literate friend or neighbour. The Shropshire Council stats don't make pretty reading. It's the 10th worst authority in England overall, 142nd out of 152, for the way it's coping with the cuts facing disabled people. The cuts level is categorised as high and the coping level as bad. When it comes to individual budgets, there has been a 2.17% change to disabled children and families, care and support, a 7.27% change to adult care and support, and an 11.77% change to older people's care and support. Shropshire Council has increased the cost of community meals services by 9% and closed one day centre, with another to follow. The council also deducts 25% from the amount of personal budget before giving the money to the disabled person. By contrast, Telford and Wrekin ranks 24th out of 152 councils, not that much further from the top of the list than Shropshire Council is from the bottom. Its cuts levels are categorised as an increase and its coping level as good. There has been a 2.47% increase change to disabled children and families, care and support, and an increase of 4.08% change to adult care and support, and a decrease of 4.64% change to older people's care and support. Telford and Wrekin takes a disabled person's disability living allowance, DLA, the care component, into account when assessing how much it will contribute towards their care. Getting the message to those who need to hear it. The hardest hit debate in Shire Hall on the 10th of October filled the council chamber. Many who attended were people with disabilities, but there were also families, carers and others who wanted to add their voice to the debate. 3 councillors whose portfolios include aspects of disability also attended, as did Senior Officer Stephen Chandler. To give the event structure, it was built around 3 important questions. All of them are controversial in their different ways. The ATOS assessments, the Blue Badge parking scheme, and Shropshire Council's Live Life Your Way programme, which has replaced Your Life Your Choice. Discussion centred on these, but other subjects were also included as the debate ranged far and wide. Jim Hawkins of Radio Shropshire controlled the event tightly, making sure all sides were heard and often asking challenging questions himself. After a topic had been widely discussed, individual tables with 6 to 8 people at each would focus on it from their own experiences, and then a facilitator on each table would report back to the room as a whole. Reporting on such an event is difficult, and we have decided to do it in 2 ways. First of all, one clear theme on the day was messages. The disability community had few facts of life it wanted the Shropshire Council, the county's MPs and the government to take on board, so we divided the notes of the day under message headings. Secondly, the contemporaneous typed report is an important document in itself because it is the transcript of what people said at the time. That is available on our website. The first heading is Messages to Shropshire Council. Work with Telford and Wrekin Council to create a forum of people with disabilities. Its first task should be to make clear the ways in which the ATOS assessments fail and then come up with positive solutions as to how to do the process more fairly. Get social services involved again in completing disability assessments. Value people with disabilities as volunteers in the local community. They have a lot to give, so help them to find ways to help others. Being an active part of society is good for society and good for the individual. Make car park payment machines accessible. Get tough on able-bodied drivers who use disabled spaces. Give disabled drivers longer time to park as they are slower in getting around town, perhaps double time as in Telford Centre. Allow blue badge holders to park in loading areas when they are little used for deliveries. In pedestrianised areas, make allowance for the needs of disabled who cannot walk far. Include disabled members on panels that make decisions about the disabled. Ensure Live Life Your Way is fully implemented and that the assessments for it are acted on. Don't make Live Your Life Your Way just another cost-cutting exercise, and don't look for others such as the VCS to pay the bill. We need clarity about what personal budgets are and how they work. Tell us what things cost and involve us in the decision-making. Messages to Shropshire MPs, the second heading. The county's MPs were hardly mentioned during the debate, but the questions to the government should be of equal interest to our representatives at Westminster. This heading is called Messages to the Government. ATOS is not fit for purpose. It is a crude and unfair service to deny people the benefit they need to survive. Vulnerable disabled people live in fear of an ATOS assessment, and many unwell people have had their health further damaged by the ATOS ordeal. Many disability policies are devised for urban populations, but disabled people in rural counties often have a far worse time because of the long distances to be travelled and poor or non-existent public transport. Stop punishing people for being disabled. Enable local councils to work with the local disabled community. People fear losing their human rights. Some disabled people feel they are set up to fail when they try and enter the jobs market. Disabled need an impartial advocate. Stop harassing people who are clearly and obviously disabled and who are not so-called scroungers as portrayed by politicians and in the media. Those with non-visible disabilities, such as a colostomy or a progressive brain tumour, feel even more vulnerable. Their conditions are just as real and debilitating. There is much more to report, but no space. For the full story, you can see the SDN website. Coming out of hiding. Hidden in plain sight is the final report of the European Human Rights Commission's groundbreaking inquiry into disabled-related harassment. The report uncovers not only that harassment is a commonplace experience for disabled people, but also that a culture of disbelief and systemic institutional failures are preventing it from being tackled effectively. The full report and draft recommendations for the public authorities can be found at the EHRC website, which is www.equalityhumanrights.com. There are also case studies covering some of the most serious and compelling cases of disability-related harassment, plus much else. You can contact EHRC for more information by email at communications@equalityhumanrights.com, or share the report and your views on Twitter using the hashtag disbelief. Why the public is increasingly hostile. Meanwhile, a ComRes survey has found that half of disabled people it asked had experienced discrimination on a daily or weekly basis, and more than a third felt that attitudes towards them have got worse over the past year. ComRes is tracking the views of disabled people through parents, carers, and through a series of quarterly polls for scope. In May, the poll found that half of disabled people asked experienced discrimination on a daily or weekly basis, and more than a third felt public attitudes had got worse over the previous year. 4 months later, the survey suggests things have got worse. 47% said attitudes towards them have got worse over the past year. 66% said they had experienced aggression, hostility, or name-calling. 46% said they experienced discrimination on a daily or weekly basis, a slight drop on the previous survey, but this remains alarmingly high. 65% thought that others did not believe that they were disabled. 73% felt others presumed they did not work. Paralympics is the bright hope. Attitudes towards the disabled may be getting worse, but there is support for the Paralympics. The survey asked about the role the Paralympics could play in improving attitudes towards disabled people. 64% see the Paralympics as an opportunity for disabled people. If you take just parents of disabled children, that number rises to 74%. 40% feel either excited, included, or see the Games as empowering. 39% thought the Games would have a positive impact on either attitudes towards disabled people generally, disabled people's participation in sport, job opportunities, or transport for disabled people. For more details, you can visit www.scope.org.uk/news/Paralympics-attitudes-survey. Seniors Forum spread over county. The Shropshire Association of Senior Citizens Forums began life in 2001 as Senior Citizens Forum Shrewsbury. It had nothing more than a vigorous committee with ambitions to improve life for older people in the county. Some of those ambitions have been realised and some have yet to be achieved, but the Forum is now an active county-wide organisation with 6 district forums. It has more than 6,000 members, issues a bi-monthly news magazine, and is working with many other forums to try and ensure a fairer and better life for older people everywhere, especially the most vulnerable. The Forum is a member of the National Pensioners Convention and liaises closely with Age Concern and Age UK, formerly Help the Aged. Another purpose of all this activity is to build a national voice for pensioners and all older people, to give them access to the national corridors of power, to be a truly representative voice for Shropshire. The Forum wants to increase contact with more of the isolated parts of the county. Politicians are aware of this authority vested in large membership organisations, and senior citizens make up 25% of the electorate. The Forum is keen to enrol as many new members as possible and to make contact with older people's social clubs, friendship clubs and organisations with members who are approaching a retirement. Membership is free, and for more information you can contact the Shropshire Association of Senior Citizens Forums, 5 Swan Hill Court, Shrewsbury, SY1 1NP. The telephone number is 01743 244 640, or you can email office@sascf.org.uk. The website is www.seniorsforumsshropshire.org.